Hi, fourth graders. So we're continuing on to learn about the Middle Ages and art in the Middle Ages. We've looked at Gothic cathedrals, we've looked at the gargoyles and the rose windows in them. We're going to look at now at a different kind of art form, which are tapestries. Okay, tapestries just means fabric or material, and they're not just simple plain old fabrics or materials. They're very highly decorated and highly designed and highly artistic. So they would spend years and years and years on these beautiful tapestries, and they would use these tapestries to tell a story. So we're going to look at a specific tapestry today called the Hunt of the Unicorn. It was made in France around 1600, and there's something very serious I need to show you first, which is this photo of a dog in a cardboard cage wearing a horn. I guess people are getting a little bored during this coronavirus staying at home thing, so they're recreating famous works of art at home, and I thought this was hilarious, a recreation of the Hunt of the Unicorn tapestry. What do you guys think? Is it giving you ideas for famous artwork that you can recreate at home? I would love to see pictures that you guys have done of famous works of art recreated at home. All right, so these tapestries, I put this picture in here in a building so that you could get a sense for how big they are. They're very, very tall, at least 12 to 15 feet tall, and right now they're hanging in New York City, so if you ever visit New York, you could go to see these, but they were originally created in France. They were, the origin of them is a little bit unknown still. It's a little bit still of a mystery who exactly these were created for and why and exactly when. They really don't know. A lot of art historians think that they were created for a wedding, as to celebrate a wedding of someone probably pretty rich and important if they were able to have such beautiful things made for them. They do know that during the French Revolution, which was a big war that happened in France, that these tapestries were looted and taken out of the house that they had been hanging in and used to cover potatoes. So they just basically treated them like kind of garbage or like wrappers and wrapped a bunch of potatoes in them and threw them in a cellar. They did sustain a little bit of damage during that time, but luckily they were recovered and hung up and kept safe from then on. So these medieval tapestries, they tell stories without words. Remember how we talked about how in those days most people could not read, only a few people could read. And so just like they used stained glass to tell stories, they did the same thing with these tapestries. I want you to look closely at this tapestry. This is the first scene in the story that they're telling, okay? So they're going to tell the story of the Hunt of the Unicorn. And here's the first scene where the hunters enter the woods. And if we look closely at this tapestry, I want you to notice something that's hiding in the background. We can see a lot of plants and leaves and flowers, right? That's actually, there's a name for this kind of background design. It's called millefleurie, and it's French, and it actually means a million flowers. And so all these tapestries where the whole background is just covered with lots of little flowers, that's the name for it, millefleurie. There's also something else hiding in the background here. Do you guys see some letters? Looks like an A and a backwards E to me, or an A and a D. That's one reason that art historians think that this might have been a wedding gift or in celebration of a wedding, because it has initials in it, and that might have been the initials of the bride or groom. We don't know. It's a mystery. So you guys use your detective hat and try to see if you can pick up any clues as we look at the rest of these tapestries. Okay, so this is the first part of the story. The hunters enter the woods. Here's the second part of the story. The unicorn is found. So the hunters here are kind of behind the bushes, and the unicorn doesn't see them yet. They've gathered around what do we notice here in the middle of the fountain? Same initials, right? And here they've found the unicorn putting its horn into this little stream that's coming out of the fountain. Now, that's important because they believed that unicorns had magical powers, and one of the powers that the unicorn had was that it could use its horn to purify water and make it safe to drink. So that was actually the reason that these hunters wanted to hunt and kill and capture the unicorn, is because they wanted those powers for themselves to make water pure. Okay, let's see what happens next. The unicorn is attacked. So here we have the hunters coming out from behind the bushes and stabbing their spears at the unicorn. And the unicorn jumps out of the river. In the next tapestry, the unicorn is shown defending itself. So it has run from the river and is now about to send this guy flying backwards with his powerful hooves. And this poor doggy got in the way, and now the unicorn has stabbed him with his horn too. So even though the unicorn is sort of this peaceful, magical character, it's not going to go down without a fight. The next panel was cut up, and so we can only see sections of it. The entire panel was lost when it was cut up, and so we have two sections from this panel, and we know that what's happening here is that the unicorn is getting tricked. So this lady has sort of lured it into thinking that it's safe so that it can kind of rest, and the dogs are taking care of it and she's taking care of it, but she's actually tricking the unicorn, and she's raising her hand up as a signal to the hunter that she has a unicorn, and the hunter is going to blow his horn and alert the other hunters that the unicorn is there. Okay, here we have kind of two scenes in one. So up here in this corner, the unicorn is slain. This hunter is hurting and stabbing it. The unicorn is dying. And in this section of the tapestry, the unicorn is laying dead on the back of this horse. So this horse is carrying the unicorn back to the castle, and all the hunters are coming back with the unicorn as their prize. But do you think I would just tell you a story where the unicorn died at the end and that was the end? I wouldn't do that. I'm only going to tell you happy stories. So here's the last panel of this series, and the unicorn is alive again. And so the unicorn in this story comes back to life and is here in this fence. And so now the unicorn is owned by the people of the castle, but it's alive. Do you guys notice the mille-fleury background? How the whole background is just filled with a million different flowers? Do you think I should make it your homework assignment to count all the different flowers and see if you get to 1,000,000? No, I won't do that. But see if you can notice the initials. They're hiding all over, aren't they? Now imagine if this story of the hunt of the unicorn came to life. Okay, so did you guys enjoy that video? Is that kind of how you imagined the scene playing out? We're going to talk more next week about weaving and how they made these tapestries and how they made the colors and the threads and how they weave them together. And we're going to do our own weaving next week. But for this week, I want you to think about the storytelling part of this kind of art. And can you think of any other art forms that tell stories through several pictures that are all linked together? So if you can imagine these tapestries on the wall in a room, and you look around the room and each square kind of has a different part of the same story. Can you think of any other artwork that does that? What about comic strips? Have you ever thought of that connection? There are no words in this particular comic strip. Let's see if we can follow the story, okay? So this is a comic strip called Peanuts, and it has Charlie Brown and his friends in it, right? Okay, so this is the bird Woodstock wakes up, yaws. And down below, Charlie Brown is playing baseball. And Woodstock decides to go back to sleep. Charlie Brown swings his bat and hits a ball, and kaplowy, smashes right into poor Woodstock's nest. Oh my goodness, he's surprised, he's dazed, he was just sleeping. He comes over to Snoopy. Can we tell just how he's feeling? Even though there aren't any words to tell us? Yep. Kicks the ground and walks away. Now, Snoopy is not the one that knocked Woodstock out of his nest, right? It was Charlie Brown. So what does Snoopy do? Well, he turns around and walks over and gives Charlie Brown a little kick in the pants, right? All right, let's look at another comic with no words. This is a Garfield. Okay, so we have Garfield sitting here. Garfield's kind of a grumpy cat. He was the original grumpy cat before Grumpy Cat. Garfield's sitting there with his drink, feeling crabby or tired, maybe bored. Spider comes down. Huh? Garfield gets his newspaper, whack. Watches the spider sail away, feeling pretty good about himself. Huh? Uh-oh. What? Down comes the spider again. Whee! Smacks him on the back of the head, spills his coffee. Well, he gets what's coming to him, I guess. All right, let's look at one more. This is a Calvin and Hobbes. Calvin's walking along with his umbrella, feels a couple raindrops. So he gets his umbrella open, but instead of putting it to cover the rain, turns it upside down, lets it fill with rain and plays in it. So it's kind of silly and fun because it's a little twist from what we expect to happen. So today, I just want you to take a couple minutes and see if you can draw out your own little comic strip. Draw a couple of squares to be your different scenes in your comic. Think of a character, and think of just one little funny, silly thing that that character can do. Your comic strip can have word bubbles if you want, or it can be without words like these examples that we've looked at. And I want you to think about how you can tell a story just like they did in medieval times through these tapestries by a series of pictures with the same characters without using words. Okay? And I would super, super love if you do make a comic strip, if you took a picture of it and sent it to my email, because I would love to see what you guys are creating at home. I hope you're all surviving, doing good, and enjoying some art here and then during your quarantine. And I look forward to seeing you next week.